I remember the day so clearly, standing in the hallway of Jefferson Middle School, my heart racing as I scanned the wall of honor, where photos of all academic competition winners were proudly displayed. My eyes moved methodically across each smiling face, row by row, searching for my own. Science fair winners, spelling bee champions, math Olympiad medalists. They were all there. Everyone except me. It has to be here somewhere, I whispered to myself, my finger tracing along the polished wooden frame that housed 24 photographs. I had won the annual science competition fair and square. My project on solar energy conversion had impressed even the university professors on the judging panel. So where was my picture? That moment in the hallway, at 12 years old, was my first real lesson that sometimes your achievements can be erased if someone decides you don't belong on the wall. My name is Zora Jenkins, and back in 1994, I was the science girl, not the popular girl, not the pretty girl, not even the smart girl. Specifically, the science girl, the one who'd rather spend lunch period in Mr. Coleman's classroom playing with circuit boards than gossiping about who liked whom on the playground, the one who had memorized the periodic table by 5th grade because the patterns in it made sense when so much else in middle school didn't. You've got a remarkable mind, Zora, my father would tell me while we tinkered with old radios in our garage, the kind that sees connections others miss. Dad worked as an electrical engineer at the power company, and Mom was a nurse at County General. They'd both gone to college despite growing up in families where that wasn't common. Education is non-negotiable in this house, Mom would say whenever my older brother Marcus or I complained about homework. Our family lived in a modest but comfortable 2-story home in a mostly integrated neighborhood on the east side of town. Not wealthy, but stable. Dad called us solidly middle class, with emphasis on the solid. We had enough for what we needed, and occasionally what we wanted. My parents had worked hard to provide this stability, and they reminded us of it often. The annual science competition was the highlight of the school's academic calendar. Students worked for months on their projects, and the winners received not just recognition, but also scholarship money toward college. The top 3 places got their photographs displayed on the Wall of Honor for the entire year, alongside other academic achievers. My project that year focused on improving solar panel efficiency, using a reflective backing I'd designed with my father's help. Nothing revolutionary, but thoughtful and well executed for a 7th grader. I'd spent 3 months testing different materials in our backyard, meticulously documenting results in a lab notebook that grew dog-eared from constant use. The day of the competition, I stood beside my display board, nervous but confident, watching as judges moved from table to table in the gymnasium. When they reached my station, I launched into my presentation, the words flowing easily after weeks of practice. The problem with current solar panels is they only convert about 15% of sunlight into electricity, I explained, pointing to my graphs. My design increases that by 23% by capturing and redirecting light that would normally be lost. I noticed one judge, Dr. Winters from the community college, nodding approvingly. Another, Mrs. Henderson, the assistant principal, seemed less impressed, her lips pressed into a thin line as she scribbled notes. After the judges moved on, Amber Wallace, whose volcano project sat at the next table, leaned over. "That was actually pretty good," she said, sounding surprised. Amber was the daughter of school board president Richard Wallace. She had perfect blonde hair, wore clothes from the mall's expensive stores, and moved through the school with the easy confidence of someone who's never questioned whether they belong. "Thanks," I replied, genuinely appreciative. Amber and I weren't friends. We occupied entirely different social circles, but a compliment was a compliment. "My dad says solar energy is just a fad, though," she added with a shrug. "He says it'll never replace real power." I wanted to argue, but just smiled politely instead. No point getting into a debate now. When Principal Matthews announced the winners later that afternoon, I was standing between my parents. Mom had taken a rare day off from her nursing shift, and Dad had rearranged his work schedule. "Third place goes to Amber Wallace for her project on volcanic activity." Amber bounced to the stage, accepting her small trophy with a practiced smile. Her father, sitting in the front row, applauded loudly. Second place goes to Jason Rodriguez for his work on water filtration systems. More applause as Jason, a quiet 8th grader I knew from math club, collected his award. And first place in this year's annual science competition goes to, I held my breath, Zora Jenkins for her innovative work on solar energy conversion. For a moment, I couldn't move. Mom nudged me gently. That's you, baby. Go on up there. Walking to that stage felt like floating. Principal Matthews handed me the trophy, a shining silver cup that felt heavier than it looked, and shook my hand for the photographer from the local paper. I caught a glimpse of my parents in the audience, Dad giving me a thumbs up, Mom discreetly wiping away tears. Congratulations, Zora, Principal Matthews said, leaning toward the microphone. Your project demonstrated exceptional scientific thinking and practical application. I smiled so hard my cheeks hurt. This was the validation I'd worked for. I belonged here. After the ceremony, families mingled in the gymnasium, enjoying refreshments. Mom and Dad were busy accepting congratulations from my teachers when I noticed Mr. Wallace, Amber's father, speaking with Principal Matthews in a corner. Their conversation seemed intense, with Mr. Wallace doing most of the talking, his finger occasionally jabbing the air for emphasis. Mrs. Henderson, the assistant principal who'd seemed unimpressed with my project, joined them, nodding along to whatever Mr. Wallace was saying. What do you think that's about? I asked Marcus, who had come to support me despite claiming that science fairs were painfully nerdy. My 16-year-old brother followed my gaze, probably upset his precious daughter didn't win. He said, shrugging. Adults are political, Zora. Get used to it. I wanted to believe it was that simple, but something in their postures, the way Principal Matthews seemed to be shrinking under Mr. Wallace's words, made me uneasy. Come on, Marcus said, breaking into my thoughts. Mom says we can get ice cream to celebrate. Your choice of place. I pushed the concern aside. This was my moment, after all. A week later, the school secretary took photographs of all the academic winners for the Wall of Honor. I wore my favorite blue dress, the one Mom had bought specially for my cousin's wedding. My hair was freshly braided the night before, and I practiced my smile in the bathroom mirror until it looked natural. Stand right here, Ms. Davis instructed, positioning me against a plain blue backdrop. Now smile like you just won first place, which you did. The camera flashed 3 times. Perfect, she said. These will go up next Monday, after they're printed and framed. Monday came, and I eagerly made my detour to the main hallway before first period. The Wall of Honor had been updated. Fresh photographs smiled out from behind glass. The spelling bee winners, the math Olympiad medalists, the essay contest winners, and the science competition winners. Amber's picture was there, labeled 3rd place. Jason's picture was there, labeled 2nd place. But where the 1st place photo should have been, my photo, was nothing. Just an empty space with a small typed card. 1st place, to be updated. I stared at the empty space, confused. Had there been a problem with my photograph? Did they need to retake it? Throughout the day, I kept returning to the wall during breaks, hoping my picture would appear. It didn't. That evening at dinner, I mentioned the missing photograph. They probably just forgot to put it up, Mom said, passing me the green beans. I'm sure it'll be there tomorrow. Maybe, I said, pushing food around my plate. But it's weird, right? Everyone else's picture is there. Dad looked thoughtful. If it's not up by Friday, I'll call the school. By Friday, the space remained empty, though the card had changed to read simply 1st place, with no mention of updating. I reminded Dad about his promise to call. I'll do it right now, he said, his expression serious. Dad didn't make promises lightly, especially to his children. I sat at the kitchen counter listening to his side of the conversation. Yes, I'm calling about the Wall of Honor. My daughter Zora Jenkins won 1st place in the science competition, but her photograph isn't displayed. I see. Yes, I understand mistakes happen, but it's been a full week. When can we expect this to be corrected? Monday, then. Thank you. He hung up, his face unreadable. Well, I prompted. They claim there was a mix-up with the photographs. Mrs. Henderson apologized and said yours will be up by Monday. Relief washed over me. So it was just a mistake. Dad nodded, but something in his expression made me think he wasn't entirely convinced. Monday came. My picture wasn't there. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, still nothing. By Friday, the empty space had been removed entirely. The display had been rearranged so that only second and third place were shown, with no indication that a first place existed at all. I felt like I was disappearing. That night, I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen after they thought I'd gone to bed. "This isn't right, Patricia," my father was saying, his voice low but intense. "She won fair and square. The judges signed off on it." "I know, James," my mother replied. "But are you sure this is about what you're suggesting? What else could it be? You saw how Wallace was talking to Matthews after the ceremony, and now suddenly our daughter's achievement isn't worth acknowledging. It could just be incompetence," Mom said, though she didn't sound convinced. 3 weeks of incompetence? When everything else on that wall is perfectly in order? Dad's voice rose slightly. "No, someone made a decision. So what do we do? I'll talk to Matthews directly, face to face. And if that doesn't work?" There was a pause. "Then we make noise. Lots of it." I crept back to my room, my mind racing. Was this really happening because of who I was? The possibility felt both crushing and infuriating. I'd won based on the merit of my work. My project was good. Everyone had said so. Why wasn't that enough? The next morning, Dad went to the school before work, dressed in his best suit, what Mom called his taking care of business outfit. When he came home that evening, his jaw was set in a way I recognized from rare moments when he was truly angry. "What happened?" Mom asked as soon as he walked in. "Matthews claims there was a reconsideration of the results after some concerns were raised about the judging process. He wouldn't say who raised these concerns or what they were specifically." "A reconsideration?" Mom echoed, incredulous. "After announcing the winners publicly? After giving her the trophy?" Dad loosened his tie. He suggested, not in so many words of course, that perhaps one of the judges was overly impressed with Zora's presentation style, rather than the scientific merit. "That's ridiculous," Mom snapped. "Her project was solid. You helped her with it, for goodness sake." "Oh, I know," Dad said, his voice dangerously calm. I reminded him that Dr. Winters from the college was the head judge, and he's hardly easily impressed by a good speech. That's when Matthews became very interested in the papers on his desk and said he had another meeting. I sat at the kitchen table feeling smaller with each word. "So what happens now?" I asked, hating how my voice cracked. Dad kneeled beside my chair, putting his hands on my shoulders. "Now, Zora, we fight, because you earned that recognition, and no one gets to take it away just because they don't like the way you look or where you come from." That was the first time I understood with complete clarity what was happening. It wasn't about my project at all. The next day was Saturday, and Marcus, who was home from college for the weekend, joined us for breakfast. As Dad recounted his conversation with Principal Matthews, I watched my brother's expression darken. "So they're just erasing her?" Marcus asked, his fork clattering against his plate. "And they think that's okay?" "They think we'll accept it quietly," Dad corrected. "Many families would, just to avoid trouble. But we're not many families," Mom said firmly. Marcus was silent for a moment, thinking. Then he looked up. "I have an idea. Remember my friend Terrell? His older sister works at the Sentinel now. She's always looking for stories. The Sentinel was our city's newspaper. Not huge, but respected enough that people paid attention to what it printed. Are you suggesting we go to the press?" Mom asked, sounding hesitant. "Why not?" Marcus countered. "If the school won't acknowledge what Zora accomplished, maybe seeing it in black and white for the whole community will change their minds." Dad considered this. "It would certainly make noise." "But is it worth it?" Mom worried. "Zora still has to go to that school every day. What if this makes things harder for her?" All eyes turned to me. At 12 years old, I was suddenly being asked to make a very adult decision. I thought about the empty space on the wall, about how it felt to win, and then have that victory questioned, about other kids who might come after me, facing the same silent erasure. "I want to do it," I said finally. "It's not right what they're doing." Marcus grinned. "That's my sister. I'll call Terrell right now." 2 days later, Marcus accompanied me to meet with Aisha, Terrell's sister, at a coffee shop downtown. She was in her mid-20s, dressed in a crisp blouse with a notepad and a tape recorder. "So, Zora," she began after introductions, "tell me about your science project." I explained my solar panel design, watching as she took detailed notes. Then I told her about winning, about the missing photograph, about Principal Matthews's vague explanations. "And you believe this is happening because," she prompted gently. I glanced at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. "Because I don't look like who they want representing the school's academic excellence," I said, the words bitter in my mouth. Aisha nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Has anything like this happened before at Jefferson?" I thought about it. Not exactly like this. But last year, Deshaun Williams won the school chess tournament, and they didn't send him to the regional competition. They sent the runner-up instead. The official reason was a scheduling conflict. "Interesting," Aisha murmured, making another note. "Would Deshaun be willing to talk to me, do you think?" "Maybe," I said. "He graduated last year, but his family still lives here." "Perfect. And what about the judges from your competition? Do you think they know about this reconsideration?" Marcus leaned forward. "That's a good point. Dr. Winters especially might be interested to hear his judgment was questioned." By the end of our meeting, Aisha had a list of people to contact and a clear angle for her story. "This might take a week or so," she cautioned. "I want to be thorough. Get all sides." "Thank you for taking this seriously," I said as we prepared to leave. She smiled, warm and genuine. "Zora, stories like yours need to be told. The quiet injustices are often the most insidious." The article appeared in the Sunday edition of the Sentinel, front page of the local section. "Science Fair winner's achievement erased from school display. Parents question motivation." Alongside it was a photograph of me holding my trophy, smiling proudly. The same image that should have been on the Wall of Honor. Aisha had done her homework. She'd interviewed Dr. Winters, who expressed surprise that the UR results had been reconsidered without the judge's input. She'd spoken to 2 other parents whose children had experienced similar unexplained exclusions in recent years. She'd even attempted to interview Principal Matthews and Mr. Wallace, though both had declined to comment directly, offering only written statements about maintaining the integrity of school competitions. The morning the article was published, our phones started ringing early. First were calls from family and friends offering support. Then came calls from other parents at Jefferson, some sharing similar stories, others expressing shock and dismay. By Monday, the story had spread throughout the school. Walking through the hallways, I noticed the whispers, the glances, some supportive, some uncomfortable, some hostile. Amber Wallace pointedly turned away when I passed her in the cafeteria. Ms. Wilson, my English teacher, pulled me aside after class. "I just want you to know," she whispered. "Many of us on staff were very impressed with your project. What's happening isn't right." In science class, Mr. Coleman made a point of asking me to explain part of my project to the class, giving me an opportunity to shine that felt like a quiet act of rebellion. But it was what happened after school that truly surprised me. As I walked toward the bus, a group of students I barely knew fell into step beside me. "That was really brave, what you did," said a girl named Keisha. "Yeah," added Michael, a quiet boy who excelled at math. "They did something similar when my brother was here." Nobody ever said anything. "Well, we're saying something now," said another student, Luis. "My mom called the school board this morning. I realized then that this wasn't just about my picture anymore. It was about all the times students had been made to feel less than, had their achievements minimized or ignored, had been sent the message that excellence from them wasn't expected or wanted. By Wednesday, the school district superintendent had announced an investigation into the allegations regarding Jefferson Middle School's academic recognition practices. By Friday, a special school board meeting had been scheduled to address the issue. The meeting was held in the school auditorium, packed with parents, teachers, and community members. My entire family sat in the 3rd row, Dad in his suit again, Mom looking fierce in her best dress, Marcus recording everything on a small tape recorder. Just in case, Superintendent Davis opened the meeting with a prepared statement. "We take these allegations very seriously. Jefferson Middle School has always prided itself on recognizing academic excellence in all students, regardless of background. If our practices have fallen short of this ideal, we are committed to correcting course immediately." Mr. Wallace sat with the other board members on stage, his face carefully neutral. Principal Matthews was notably absent, having called in sick. One by one, parents and community members approached the microphone to speak. Some shared stories similar to mine. Others spoke about the importance of fair representation and recognition. A few defended the school, suggesting the situation had been blown out of proportion. When it was my father's turn to speak, he walked to the microphone with measured steps. "My name is James Jenkins," he began, his voice steady. "My daughter Zora won first place in the annual science competition fair and square. Her achievement was publicly acknowledged, then systematically erased. When questioned, we were given excuses, not answers." He paused, looking directly at the board members. "I work with circuits and systems for a living. When something doesn't work as designed, I don't make excuses. I fix it. This system is broken. Fix it. Not just for my daughter, but for every child who deserves to see themselves represented on that wall of honor. Because what you're teaching them right now is that excellence only counts if it comes in certain packages. And that lesson will stay with them long after they've forgotten the periodic table or how to diagram a sentence." The room erupted in applause. Mr. Wallace shifted uncomfortably in his seat. By the end of the meeting, the superintendent had announced several immediate actions: an audit of all academic recognition practices at Jefferson, the formation of a diverse committee to oversee future competitions, and, most importantly to me, the immediate restoration of all rightfully earned recognitions, including my photograph on the Wall of Honor. As we left the auditorium, reporters from not just the Sentinel but also the city's major newspaper and a local TV station approached us for comments. My parents handled most of the questions, but eventually a microphone was thrust toward me. "Zora, how do you feel about tonight's outcome?" asked a reporter. I thought for a moment before answering. "I feel like I was heard, like I mattered. That's all anyone really wants, I think." As the following Monday, I approached the Wall of Honor with cautious optimism. There, in the space that had been empty for weeks, was my photograph. "First place, Zora Jenkins," read the small plaque beneath it. Standing before it, I felt a complex mix of emotions: pride in the accomplishment, satisfaction at the justice served, but also a lingering sadness that it had taken so much effort to secure what should have been automatic. "Mrs. Henderson passed by as I stood there, her heels clicking sharply on the linoleum. She paused, glancing at the newly completed display. "I hope you're satisfied," she said quietly. "It's not about satisfaction, Mrs. Henderson," I replied, surprising myself with my composure. "It's about fairness." She pressed her lips together, then continued down the hall without another word. Later that day, Amber Wallace approached me in the cafeteria, sliding onto the bench across from me as I ate lunch alone. "My dad's really mad," she said without preamble. "I'm sorry to hear that," I replied cautiously. She shrugged. "He'll get over it. But I wanted to say, I actually thought your project was better than mine, even before all this happened." I blinked, surprised by her candor. "Thank you. My volcano was basic. I did it in like 2 days," she admitted with a small laugh. "But Dad always said presentation matters more than content." "Maybe both matter," I suggested. She considered this, then nodded. "Maybe." She stood to leave, then hesitated. "Anyway, congratulations. For real this time." As she walked away, I realized something important. Standing up hadn't just changed things for me. It had created small ripples of truth and self-reflection that extended far beyond my photograph on a wall. That experience shaped me in ways I'm still discovering 25 years later. It taught me that justice sometimes requires making noise, that silence can be complicity, and that systems don't change themselves, people change them. I went on to study engineering in college, then environmental science in graduate school. Today, I lead a research team developing advanced solar technology. Yes, my childhood interest became my career. Our latest panels achieve efficiency rates that middle school me could only dream about. But perhaps more important than my career trajectory was how that 7th grade experience influenced my character. I learned to speak up, not just for myself but for others facing similar invisible barriers. I learned that family, those who stand beside you when it would be easier to stay quiet, is an irreplaceable resource. And I learned that sometimes the most important battles are fought not for what you can gain, but for what you refuse to lose. Your dignity, your truth, your rightful place. Last month, I returned to my hometown for a conference. While there, I decided to visit the local community center, where I was scheduled to give a talk about renewable energy. As I walked through the lobby, checking in at the front desk, I was surprised to hear a familiar voice. I don't understand why my application was rejected again. I've submitted everything required. I turned to see an older woman at the desk next to mine, frustration evident in her posture. It took me a moment to place her. Mrs. Henderson, my former assistant principal, now in her 70s, her once dark hair completely gray. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Henderson," the young clerk was saying, "but the senior housing program has specific income requirements, and according to your paperwork—" "I know what the requirements are," she interrupted. "I've been trying to get approved for 6 months. My pension barely covers my rent now, and they're raising it again next month." I hesitated, then stepped toward her. "Mrs. Henderson." She turned, squinting slightly before recognition dawned. "Zora Jenkins," she said, her voice flat. "It's been a long time." "It has," I agreed. "I couldn't help overhearing. Are you having trouble with housing assistance?" Her shoulders slumped slightly, pride visibly warring with necessity. "The system is impossible to navigate. Everything's online now, and I can't— Well, computers were never my strong suit." How ironic life can be. The woman who had once been part of a system that tried to diminish me now found herself diminished by a different system, one equally indifferent to individual circumstances. "I might be able to help," I offered. "I serve on the board of a non-profit that assists seniors with housing issues. We have advocates who can help you through the application process." She studied me, perhaps searching for ulterior motives or mockery. Finding none, she sighed. "Why would you help me? After everything?" "Because everyone deserves dignity," I said simply. "And because the person I became is partly thanks to what happened back then. It taught me to fight systems, not people." Something shifted in her expression. Not quite remorse, but perhaps understanding. She accepted my business card with a small nod. As I watched her walk away, I thought about how life has a way of bringing us full circle, offering unexpected opportunities for grace. Not for forgetting, but for moving forward with the wisdom hard-won from our past battles. Have you ever had to stand up against an unfair system, or found yourself in a situation where your accomplishments were diminished because of who you are? I'd love to hear your story. Sometimes sharing these experiences helps us realize we're not alone in these struggles, and maybe gives someone else the courage to make noise when silence would be easier. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear that their voice matters, that persistence in the face of injustice is worth it, and that sometimes the most important thing we can do is refuse to disappear. Because in the end, the walls that truly matter aren't the ones in school hallways, but the ones we build within ourselves. Walls of strength, of conviction, of unwavering belief in our own worth. Those are the walls no one can erase.